Be authentic, stay authentic, and find your authentic voice. Because your personal brand identity needs to be consistent. Authenticity is a word we hear constantly online, but there's a paradox about it. The second your authenticity becomes popular, it turns into a trend. And if it's a trend, can it really be authentic anymore? Or did it just turn into a performance that is playing to be authentic? That's a question I want to dig into today through one very specific case study. VANS. We've talked about Carhartt a few videos ago, but this time we're digging deeper into the understanding of what authenticity really means, and also because I started to see VANS sneakers everywhere all over the runway. What does that mean? What does that also mean concerning people that we watch all day? I could have chosen your most favorite influencer that is bringing the question of authenticity to an edge, but honestly speaking about a brand here makes it a lot easier for me to stay politically correct, but read between the lines. Hello, welcome back to my huge channel, everybody. This is tubavalon, and on this channel, we're analyzing fashion theories and design. Quick disclaimer here, you can subscribe to the Patreon via the link down below to have access to exuberantly authentic videos, tons of videos with designers, with myself, with people that have a say in fashion and are incredibly smart that we can learn of. You can be part of our fashion conversations on the Discord, which we have daily, which are very deep. I mean, a lot of my videos are based on conversations we're having on the Discord. And you will also have access to people that share the same values and interest in fashion as you do all over the world, because we're a little global family, and that's the best thing in the world. And it's the most beautiful and healthy and pretty fashion community that I've ever seen. And you know what? It's 100% authentic. The link is down below. Let's get into this. So born into the California skate culture, VANS were once the badge of authenticity. Now they're on the high fashion runways, as I said earlier, but the origin remains pretty authentic. So how do we read that shift? And what does it say about authenticity in our own lives, including our personal social media and the profiles we keep looking at every day? VANS was founded in 1966 in Anaheim, California by Paul Van Doren. The company didn't start as a fashion label at all. It was a small local shoe business known for its sticky rubber soles and its willingness to customize pairs for customers. Funny side fact, Paul Van Doren dropped from school in the age of 14 and did literally nothing until he started working in a shoe factory. Inspirational. What made VANS authentic was definitely not their marketing campaign. That became a topic way later, but in the beginning, it was only about their functionality. Skaters in Southern California discovered that VANS held up against grip tape better than other shoes, and the waffle sole gave them traction. So VANS spread through word of mouth, through practice, and not through advertising. And apparently, since you like sociological theories more than people's opinions that consist of I like that, that's pretty, let's talk about Mr. Goffman. The sociologist Erving Goffman helps us to understand the phenomenon of VANS pretty well. And just to make clear already, with every step that we're digging deeper into the question of authenticity, I will come at you with a different definition and a different sociologist because it's so interesting and you'll love it. Goffman argues that life is like theater. We're all performing roles for an audience. There's a front stage where we present ourselves carefully and a backstage where we relax. And early VANS culture was pretty much backstage. Skaters weren't trying to look cool for the world, they were wearing what worked in their environment and what they needed, and that's why they even decided to buy the product. The brand was not known and had no popular appeal. The authenticity was a byproduct of practice and not a performance for outsiders. So if we reduce it to its core, Erving Goffman is saying authenticity is performance. But I'm not really happy with that definition, so we're gonna dig a bit deeper and look what happened once VANS got popular. In the late 70s and 80s, VANS exploded into the mainstream. Sean Penn wore checkerboard slip-ons and Fast Times at Ridgemont High in 1982, and suddenly the shoe became a fashion symbol. From there, VANS were no longer just skater gear, they were shorthand for laid-back rebellion, Californian cool, anti-establishment identity, things they still stand for until this day. And to understand the idea of popularity a bit better, I think it helps to read a bit into Judith Butler. This is where her theory of performativity comes in. Butler argued that identity isn't something we discover deep inside ourselves, it's something we perform over and over until it feels real. Judith Butler says, especially in her book Gender Troubles, which was released in 1990, where she also talks a lot about gender by itself, says identity isn't a fixed inner truth waiting inside of yourself. which is waiting to be expressed. It's not about that. She says that identity is being produced and sustained only through repetition. Repetition of acts, repetition of gestures, and repetition of styles. Speaking about gender, she says that we are being born without identity, without any gender identity. But the norms and the structures and the styles we have that are being forced on us is what creates, through repetition, through tons of repetition, the identity, the gender identity that we suddenly think we have. It's only the repetition. If we would have been born with a different style of repetition, we would believe that we have a different gender identity. So she says, yes, repetition is relevant for authenticity, but it doesn't mean that you're being authentic because you repeated a certain act constantly, which means, in the example of VANS or other people that you might see online constantly that are repeating certain acts where you kind of feel like, I think that's authentic. It's not. It's just constant repetition of something to make you believe like it because they kind of believe it. Coming back to VANS, if we see a kid wearing VANS on a skate park and we see that kid every day on the skate park skating, it is a repetition of a movement, of a gesture, of a sport. We believe it's authentic that this kid is wearing VANS for the sake of skating, for example. It is authentic. We see repetition. It's here every day. This kid wants to skate. But instead, if we see somebody wearing VANS for the first time, no repetition, that person hasn't worn these shoes before, and it's for a fashion shoot. There's something on that day, so they wear it. They're clean, they're unworn, there's no repetition and gestures, which makes us question the authenticity. It doesn't feel real, it feels like a costume. And that's the paradox about authenticity, and it's so complicated to understand, because this means that repetition allows something to be authentic, but repetition also allows other people to imitate your kind of repetition. Because once there are signs for this repetition, going to the skate park constantly means I'm authentic, I'm a skater. These signs can be imitated. I don't know, going to the skate park once, having a photo at a skate park. So the signals are being imitated in different forms. In social media, that's pretty easy to show, like, a lot of influencers act like they have a certain lifestyle, but actually it's just a photo because they know what the signs are to replicate something. Okay, is that it's not so complicated actually, but I'm not a perfect teacher here, okay? I'm trying to understand stuff myself. So talking about influencers, or I don't want to say only influencers, because it can also be private people that want to give you an impression of what they stand for. This is something we're being challenged with every day. And I'm really surprised nobody talks about the topic of authenticity to its core, what it actually means. I just think we need to be very careful listening to people talking about brand identity and how you can show yourself a certain way that you're not, because I don't think that's the route to happiness. And at the end of the day, all we want is be happy, okay? These likes and clicks will not make you essentially happy in life. So the anecdote is over. We're going back. So just to summarize what Judith Butler says, she says, repetition is the condition of authenticity. Repetition needs to be given to be authentic. You cannot have done something once and say, this is my most favorite hobby, I love reading, if you read once a book in your life. It is not authentic. So we need constant repetition. But also we need to have in mind that constant repetition makes the idea of authenticity vulnerable because it's easy to get copied. Because the repetition is easy to see, people see what it is, copy it once, and act like they constantly do it. That's the problem. So Butler helped us to understand how identity is being created, how authenticity is being created, what needs to happen for that. But Lionel Trilling is the one that helps us understand the paradox that we just talked about. He says it's not only about authenticity, it's also about something else, another important word. And that is sincerity. I know, something we find very rarely on the streets, online, and I mean in the virtual world. What is sincere anymore? I know, it's so easy to understand, and as if we didn't have enough distinction already, let's add another word to the pot and try to understand what is truly authentic. So what he basically says is that sincerity means that what you present to the world matches how you feel inside. You say, for example, I'm so happy for you. You're so lucky that you got the Prada Fall 25 menswear flower cowboy boots. And you mean it. You're really happy for the person. So you're like, yeah, I'm sincere. I'm happy for you. And you have it. So that's cool. Authenticity, though, is something else, he says. It's about being true to your inner self. And in the early days, that was given. Vans was creating shoes for skaters. Skaters liked them for skating. They bought them. Sincerity given. But once the brand was worn by people outside the culture, Vans became a performance of authenticity. I need shoes that others are wearing. Okay, here have shoes that other people are wearing. Sincerity not given. The dilemma is that sincerity can always be imitated as well. You might know that well when you look on your phone and are doom scrolling. Can you really tell who's being sincere with what they are wearing? Is that really them, or is it them being watched by you that makes them wear it? And I'm not going to introduce the panopticon here because I know you've seen all this image and you know what it stands for. But right now I'm just questioning if really everybody has seen it. So very quickly, the panopticon, first imagined by Jeremy Bentham as a prison design and later expanded by Michel Foucault, is a model of power where people behave as if they are always being watched, even if they can't see the watcher. And in social studies, it describes how surveillance or the possibility of surveillance leads individuals to self-discipline and regulate their own behavior without direct force. And in terms of social media, it means we don't know who's watching us, but we do know somebody's watching us, so we act like somebody's watching us. So Trilling says, now that we're in a time where you can buy pre-scuffed Vans, stuff that looks destroyed, it looks dyed, it looks like you've worn it, things look worn in, you buy things that look like they have history. It looks like they have repetition in them. It looks like you have worn them tons of times. That reminds us of Judith Butler, right? That says repetition is necessary for authenticity. So if I buy shoes that look pre-worn, that have features of, I don't know, they look destroyed, we see that in denim so often, we also see that with shoes, I'm imitating that authenticity. But Trilling says that authenticity is still a very insight-driven feature, which means that even if you wear inauthentic Vans, to the outside it might not look sincere, but to the inside you might be authentic about it. And that's why the non-skater in Vans still looks like rebellious teenager that likes to be anti-establishment. Coming to the next part of Vans, where it gets a bit more tricky to understand how authentic the brand still is. In the 2000s and 2010s, Vans leaned fully into this paradox we talked about. Collaborations with Supreme, luxury designers, limited edition runs turned the shoe into a global commodity. What once was cheap and functional became collectible, resold, and carefully marketed. It almost sounds like somebody starts to sell their authenticity. By the way, this is also not a hate video against brands that are just expanding, and in a capitalistic world that we live in, it's just normal that you expand, and of course you're gonna leverage on your heritage. You could also see it from that perspective, but here we speak about authenticity that is being monetized and turning into a commodity, so we share that angle here. So now that we're talking money, okay, some good stuff, we also need to start talking about ethics, okay? These are two friends that don't get well along so well, usually, okay? So let's think about ethics, okay? What happens? Okay, I'm not sincere anymore, maybe I'm not authentic, so what? Like, kids start wearing my shoes. But what if I start selling this authenticity that is not so authentic anymore? What does that ethically mean? And for this, we need to read into Charles Taylor, who released a book in 1992 called The Ethics of Authenticity, and he made a very important point there. For Taylor, authenticity is a moral ideal. It means being faithful to your unique voice, resisting conformity, and not just imitating what society tells you to be. It's not just a feeling of being yourself, it's an ethical responsibility. To be authentic means to live in alignment with your values, your truth, and your singularity. So you cannot betray yourself. Yeah, Charles Taylor says, you have ethical values. It's a moral institution, this idea of authenticity. You cannot trick yourself by just repeating other people, just simulating their signs and turning it into a fake repetition and talking about it and acting like you do. You cannot fake it. And I think this explains perfectly why we find so many things insincere, so many things inauthentic on social media. Trends lead naturally to the fact that people keep repeating stuff constantly, giving it up and starting the next thing, which makes us definitely question their level of authenticity. And you know what? Even the ones repeating it constantly forever. Have you ever realized that there are like some people constantly posting the same kind of reel, constantly posting the same kind of reel, like the same concept, pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and calling it brand identity? That's not how it works. That's just them trying to replicate something, to imitate something until it works, but that's not really something authentic. I don't think it's something normal to constantly repeat the same thing. And you might say, maybe, I don't know, well, Rothko was painting the same paintings constantly. He repeated himself constantly. Yeah, but he was not imitating anybody, okay? He was not imitating anything. So that was pretty authentic of him, I think. But on social media, I feel like all these concepts that are always changing, the fact that Instagram is telling you to use a viral sound because this repetition of this sound might look authentic to people when they watch it more or whatever. All these things make just everything inauthentic. Do you really get inspired on social media? I think we only really get inspired by those names that absolutely feel authentic, which is small retailers, small boutiques, small creators that show their personal style that we haven't seen somewhere else. And I think that's a problem when we speak about distinction and when it's like, hey, it's okay to follow trends, it's natural. And that's a question I'm being asked so often. It's like, what's the problem with being trendy? And of course, there's nothing wrong. You can repeat something that you have seen somewhere else and get inspired by it. But I do believe to stay true to yourself, you really should think how you can project that trend maybe in your personality, how you can find pieces of that trend in yourself that make sense and not just apply something artificially on yourself to be part of the tribe, which is maybe our natural habit of humans to want to be part of a tribe. But I think in social media, that tribe is not real and it doesn't help to be part of that tribe. So I think it's just so confusing because repetition nowadays can be fake as well as non-repetition and direct imitation. But coming back to Taylor, he says something very interesting. In modern consumer culture, authenticity is no longer just a moral project. That has changed because it has become commodified and your social media is now your business. Instead of doing the hard work of understanding what you really are, who you are, working with your authenticity, which is very painful, can be expensive. You test drive a lot of things. What is me? What is not me? It's a lot of headache. I have constantly a headache of trying to understand what's authentic for me or not because I need to clean myself so much of the stuff that I constantly consume. And I feel like you might feel the same. Instead of doing the hard work of figuring out who you are, you can now buy the appearance of authenticity. Lifestyle products, brands, aesthetics are sold as shortcuts. If you wear this, if you decorate your apartment like that, if you buy this artisanal thing, then you look authentic. Even if it's borrowed, even if you ordered it and are sending it back, but you have that picture, so it's authentic. It's commodified. Somebody made money with this. So for Taylor, the problem is not really that people want authenticity, but that they confuse purchased authenticity for authenticity and think that that's the ethical work of authenticity, but it's not. And the purchasing part is what's very troubling here. So when VANS started, the authenticity came from the usage. They were adopted by the skaters because they just worked, and that was a lived practice, so it was authentic. And in the 2000s and 2010s, VANS authenticity was sold back to us in carefully packaged ways. We had reissues of classic colorways with heritage labels that told you were buying into history, limited edition collaborations with designers where authenticity became exclusive. Paradoxically, you could prove you were authentic by owning a rare pair. And you had runway appearances where the aura of counterculture was suddenly turned into a style marker for people far removed from the skate scene. And this is what Taylor warns the most about. Authenticity becomes a product narrative. You don't have to commit to the skater life or live to the values of rebellion or counterculture, but you can buy into it with a product for $3.99. More expensive, but pretty well priced still, I think. And coming finally to the end stage of a VANS sneaker, the runway. The transformation is complete. The functional skate shoe is now a chameleon of identities. We have streetwear and luxury. And this sounds a bit like a sad story, a sad ending. Like VANS sold their soul, they're not authentic anymore, people just bought into it, don't feel the real heritage of the brand, have never lived the skate life, everything is destroyed, everything is inauthentic. But it's not. And there are theories that could have predicted this way earlier. And that's why I love to quote Zygmunt Bauman, because I think he just understands the modern world the best. And I talked about him before, so you probably know what I'm talking about. I'm speaking about his term that he defined, which is liquid modernity. By the way, I just love this term, liquid modernity. It's snatched, liquid modernity. What does he mean by that? In the past, identities, communities, and institutions were pretty solid. People had stable jobs, long-term communities, fixed roles. Everything was kind of steady. And you could build a life around these things that don't change so much. And you also couldn't change things much, even if you wanted to, actually. Then, in late modernity, everything has become a bit liquid. Jobs are precarious, communities shift, trends come and go, nothing feels stable. And nothing is stable, society changed. So that means, for individuals, identity is no longer something fixed for life. It's something you constantly work on, reconfigure, and rebrand. It's like working on your survival mode. And Bauman's concern here is something that is pretty interesting because he says a liquid modernity, a flexible modernity also makes the idea of authenticity unstable. If you have to adapt in life constantly to new conditions, your authenticity adapts as well. Your ethical standards, your values have to adapt to that as well because the conditions around you are constantly changing. It's not a question of your inner self anymore. It's a question of your external changes as well. And this is why today no identity feels truly fixed and why it's super rare that brands or also people can hold up to one identity for so long, because it's very natural that things have to change, that identity will have to change. So actually, if you see somebody sticking to their identity insanely and want everybody to believe that this is their identity for a very long time, this can also be a sign of inauthenticity. Same for brands. This can happen as well. But on the other hand, changing your identity constantly because the conditions around you are constantly changing as well just makes your identity more unclear. It's not really clear what your identity is, what is authentic about you. It's just a bit too flexible. Vans started as a solid identity marker. In the 70s, they clearly said skate culture, and the shoes anchored you to a specific community and way of life. And there was no other reference or image for the brand. It was for the sole purpose. But over the decades, Vans adapted to survival mode. They moved from skate shops to malls, from subculture to mainstream, and from the counterculture to the runway. And each shift was a rebrand because it was necessary to stay relevant, to survive, but also a move away from the original meaning. This is why Vans don't signal this one fixed identity anymore. They can mean skate authenticity, but also streetwear cool. They can feel nostalgic, it can be a throwback look, but they also can feel luxurious. So for the consumer today, this means that you don't buy Vans because you're buying into a solid subculture that doesn't exist anymore. That identity is dead, but you're buying into a liquid brand that has reinvented itself many times, and it will probably have to continue to do so. So, what does that leave us to? Vans started as a functional skate shoe. They became a cultural performance, a mass market commodity, and also a runway statement. Along the way, they embodied every stage of authenticity to performance in that cycle. And according to our theories today, authenticity and performance are not opposites, but authenticity can lead to performance, spread as a trend, and then turn into a commodified business. So are Vans really authentic? If you ask yourself, yes, in some way, every new wearer is building a new identity with that product. But on the other side, no, absolutely not. The current Vans shoe that we have right now has nothing to do with its core identity anymore. It's just a constant shift of rebrandings. So now it's in our own hands to decide if we see an act and question its authenticity, if we're actually just watching a theater play, or if we really see the backstage. And if you want to annoy somebody and just want to make sure that they know that they're acting inauthentic and they should be aware of that, you just go to them and say, don't worry, nobody's watching you, okay? Act like nobody is really watching, because right now, you're acting like somebody's watching you. So, thanks for watching today's video. I hope you liked this one. I know it was a bit theory heavy, but I know you like this stuff and you're smart, so you get it, of course. And because you're so smart, you, of course, want to subscribe to the Patreon as well, where you have access to tons of videos, interviews, all these kind of things with designers, with people that have authentic value in the fashion world, that are architects. We talked about so many things. You will have access to the Discord, which is the most authentic, no lie. Check it out, apply all these theories on our Discord, and question a single thing of being inauthentic, and I'm gonna close down my channel if that's the case, okay? Join the Discord if you want to be deeper in fashion conversations, but also just share which pants go best with your white t-shirt, because that's such an incremental question when it comes to understanding fashion design, all these kind of things. We're a happy family, and you should be happy too. We should all be happy and try to be as authentic as possible. I really try to do that. You can let me know if I'm not. You can say, that's so play tuba. That's so not you. You're hiding behind of your sarcasm. You know what? I know. You think I was born sarcastic? Like, which kid likes to be ironic? Of course, it's a mask. Oh my God, masking is another topic I'd like to talk about. See you next week. Okay.